Greg?
Greg McCune.
Greg McCune. And on the topic of Pomona College's alma mater, which something of a controversy recently when anonymous flyers were posted around campus, and it sparked off this debate/research effort into the topic. Can you tell me what your role in this was?
Sure. Beginning last spring, so that's spring '08, I heard about this issue as all other students did from emails, and decided to pursue it a little bit more. And I noticed that there was kind of a mention in one of the emails from the president that there was going to be a group formed and there's going to be research done over the summer. So I thought that sounds pretty interesting, and I'd like to research this. So I didn't know what the correct routes to do is, so I responded to the email and I found out that the Hart Institute might be offering summer research grants. So I applied for successfully one of those, which encompassed research at Pomona College, and then continuing on that research in New England, particularly at Brown, Harvard, Williams, Amherst, and Yale. Unfortunately, Williams was not able to accommodate me last minute, so I ended up just doing research at Brown, Harvard, Yale, Amherst. That's it. And basically, I tried to find out the continuities and the differences between if minstrelsy existed at these schools, first off, but then compared to the Pomona College brand, if you will, and kind of added greater context to the whole affair.
Yeah. So what did you find out when you visited those schools?
Well, to start with the Pomona stuff that I'm sure you've already gone into, I found that basically racially derived theater was very prevalent in this era in our school, in Pomona College. And continuing that on, I found that minstrel shows in particular were extremely prevalent, and that they had influenced the alma mater, which not surprising because I expected it from this, but the degree to which minstrel shows were found surprised me. But I was somewhat of an uneducated researcher in this topic, so that wasn't really too interesting or thought-provoking. But when I went back to New England, I kind of figured, oh, well, these are like liberal institutions, and this is the liberal Northeast, they won't really have this sort of thing. And in fact, I found, starting at Harvard, that they had way more. So unfortunately, this issue that I was kind of hoping might be contained to a few backwoods schools, maybe Pomona College on the desert or something, actually was definitely a national phenomenon on the collegiate level as well. And that although I couldn't necessarily directly find any school traditions influenced by minstrelsy directly, it's very difficult to correctly determine the influence that they had on the student body at the time, because they were,
it's just a thing to do.
It really was.
Yeah, and as I understand it, there are different levels to this. There are professional minstrels who know how to go through the process of making the cork, makeup, and the exact costume. But at these colleges, they would sometimes wear suits, and they would call it vaudeville.
I saw tuxedos, things like this nature.
So they took variants of it, which weren't actually minstrelsy per se, but they were wearing blackface. Definitely wearing blackface. So on that note, do you think that Pomona College was professional, or were they kind of amateur?
I think they were most definitely probably amateur, in that, at least in comparison to the other schools I saw, and in comparison to the other research I did about professional troops. By that I mean that other schools sometimes had groups that were, like there was, like at Brown University, there was like a Brown University minstrel company, and that was like a club. They like read the right books, who knows, they might even go to see shows to like research it. And they were quasi-professionals in this, and to that degree, Amherst College equally had, like, for maybe 20 years, a company that every year performed, without fail, several professional shows in main theaters, not on school grounds, on main theaters to raise money. Other troops traveled around the country. As far as I know, even if Pomona was, their students might have been accurate depicting it, they weren't traveling. They weren't really making money outside of the school community. So to that degree, I'd say that they were amateur.
At the heart of this discussion about it is a question of whether or not Hell Pomona Hell was written for a blackface show. Now we have the testimony from Laux, the writer of the song, and Carl Olson, who was the editor for the '68 music book, who says he found a picture of the show. Now we may or may not have that picture, since none of these pictures are really dated, but what's your thought on that as far as actually?
I think in the face of all the evidence you and I have both seen, the real question should be, why are people trying to deny that the alma mater was almost certainly performed first in blackface? Because there's overwhelming evidence to support that it would not have surprised anyone at the time. It would have been shocking. It wouldn't have been insulting necessarily to any of the groups directly on campus. And I really don't think, I think when we see people who are like saying, hey, where's more proof, it's like, why would they have supplied more proof? it wasn't that big of a deal back then. You know, there would have been no reason to more explicitly than we've already seen.
You know, because if you read the article that reviews the Blackface show, they call it the baseball show. It's just an article, and then it's on to business as usual. Like it's just another spot on the page. It wasn't like a big thing.
No, and that's to be expected. And the fact that it was a baseball show, and like almost all the schools I saw, it was baseball and Navy or crew that were the two sports that were most often funded by these activities. And so I found that to be perfectly in line as well. Why would if the pattern had been for baseball fundraiser shows to be minstrel shows, and we know that Pomona College baseball shows were minstrel shows, why should we suspect that this one show was not a minstrel show?
Exactly. Just to inform you, some of the claims from skeptics is that perhaps the show was not in blackface after all, even though Laux describes it as a blackface show, and that perhaps Hail Pomona Hail wasn't written for that particular show, since the article that Laux cites only cites one of the songs, which is called Blue and White. But the point here is that there are like multiple songs with the whole school spirit theme that are named Blue and White and Hail Pomona Hail, Hail Pride, that sort of thing. And I suppose what we really should be talking about is the school history itself, and that the writer was given the Trustee Medal of Honor in 1972, and they created a scholarship to honor him, although he flunked out after a year, and as far as we know, he was just a terrible student, which I think that there should be a discussion about that, and I'm surprised that they're focusing on something so minor as the alma mater, which as far as we know, it was never a big deal to anyone until someone tried to change it. Like, I looked through the Norton papers, which are basically the papers that the deans leave behind, and he doesn't leave any executive decision about this, and he was the dean at that time, so this wasn't important to him. And there are maybe 60 boxes of Blaisdell papers, which sounds like a team effort, but I'm going to guess that that's probably not important either. So essentially, I guess my last question would be, what do you think the cause should be about the situation?
Like I was saying, I think as of now the school's actions have been very prudent, which is a suspension of the song indefinitely until a decision can be reached. That decision should be reached through a committee as is currently in existence, comprised of faculty, students, alums, trustees if they're willing. And once that judgment is reached, I would think, as a researcher who has looked into this, it would become obvious that the song is of an offensive nature to certain populations now currently, participating in the school, and that it should be abandoned as an official school, song, and a suitable alternative should be found. With that said, I'd like to point out that I don't think this part of the history of Pomona College should be swept under the rug. I don't think it should just be disbanded now that we know that the school song is somehow tainted with this evil history, that we should fail to acknowledge the role that it had for nigh on 80 years in the school community.
I think that would resolve some people's, problem with the situation with the idea of change.
I think it should also be mentioned, Cyrus, that in Lyon's History of Pomona College, 1888 to 1969, there's an upfront admittance of the fact that this was a minstrel show. And in that history, in that time period, perhaps it still was not as stigmatized and necessarily understood as it is today. And so at that point, the school administration knew, chose to admit it openly in a publication, and then move on from it. And to that degree, it should also be understood that perhaps this school history was just forgotten with time, and we should make sure that the institutions that we continue to support are equally understood in our own day, rather than let a history kind of lapse out of existence and the institution remain.
Yeah, exactly. You have any other thoughts?
Just that I encourage any interested Pomona students to research. There is a wealth of information and opportunities and grants available to do research, and I would like to thank the Hart Institute specifically for granting me mine and giving me a great summer. So that's it, and good luck with your research.